Walter Bragaman, aka Walter Bragaman, he wrote a smear piece about Jimmy Dore, and the crux of this smear piece is that Jimmy Dore has an NDA, which is anti-worker, even though he's spouts pro-worker stuff on his show. Well, as someone these Due Dissidents guys kind of rip it apart, and they show how Young Turks has the same language on their privacy policy on their website. But the idea that, first of all, Jimmy does the show out of his house. So if he's having contractors coming into his home, of course they're going to sign an NDA. And the second part is, there's a lot of hateful people that are angry at Jimmy for, doing things that actually move the ball forward in politics, like asking for force the vote. And so the idea that he would want his address or, anyone to be able to just tell people where he lives is ridiculous. He's a political commentator. And so this whole NDA thing, it's ridiculous. And it's what it really shows is how these people will go to any lengths to prevent unity amongst a cause like this. And it's really sad how the Young Turks exposed themselves in the force the vote debate, because I could see very clearly that, and Chenkin originally agreed with it, I could see very clearly that this was a strategy that would work. And the Republicans in the Freedom Caucus just proved that. One of the arguments that the squad people and the defenders used back when Force the Vote was happening is that, we can't do that, or if we do that, Kevin McCarthy will become speaker. Well, the Freedom Caucus just proved that's not the case. I think they had something like 20-something different votes, and every time there was no speaker because they couldn't get enough votes, enough of a majority to get a speaker in, because these guys were were not refusing to vote for Kevin McCarthy, and were just voting for random people like Donald Trump and, Albert Einstein, whatever. They just write in names and not vote for Kevin McCarthy. And this made Kevin McCarthy nervous enough that he actually said, okay, what do you want? What do I have to do to win your vote? And that's what Jimmy was advocating for with the squad. And these people all said, if we do that, McCarthy will become speaker 2 years ago, which we just saw was not the case. So it's clear now that they were lying. But I knew it back then because the arguments that they had against it were very unserious then. And the only way they would make those arguments is if there was someone kind of herding them into that pasture, or someone kind of pushing them to make that argument. So anyway, these Due Dissidents guys kind of detail a little bit about how the attack stems from the Young Turks. So I'll just play a bit of their clip, Keaton Weiss and Extra Bolo.
This is interesting because TYT was obviously in on this piece. They gave interviews to Walter Bragaman for this piece, and so they obviously were quick to capitalize on the piece. They made themselves a YouTube video, which is currently getting ratioed pretty hard, as I understand. But here they are lamenting the forced arbitration.
The arbitration, that stood out to me even more, right? Because arbitration can really work against the employee who has a grievance with the employer. So arbitration is common in many work contracts, and it is sometimes preferred by some union workplaces. But understand that it does put the employee at a disadvantage because it means that they don't have a jury hear their case, okay? And there's some secrecy to the arbitration process as well, whereas, when someone is being sued, through a jury system, the accusations are more public and people can learn about what the employer is being accused of.
And in the civil system, as opposed to the arbitration system, the employee wins a much higher percentage of the time.
Right.
So the companies are not unaware of that. They're choosing to put you in arbitration because it costs less. They win a higher percentage of the time. And maybe the most important part is that if you lose arbitration, which employees do, I think, about 80% of the time, then you have to pay the lawyer's costs of the employer and the entire arbitration proceedings, in which case you're totally screwed. That could wipe you out completely, especially if you're an average employee who's got that kind of money, right?
Right.
So it doesn't get any more onerous than this contract. You're basically telling an employee, you do anything I don't like, and I'm going to crush you.
All right, well, that last part is misleading because arbitration is not a sword for companies to use against employees. It's a shield that they use when employees have an issue with them. That's the whole way it works. Now, what he said about, employers win most of the time in arbitration, that's open to interpretation since most arbitrations get settled. So there's most of the time a deal. Now, who wins in that case is open to interpretation, who gets the better of the other party. And look, they are correct that there is a power imbalance in the arbitration world. And there's a power imbalance in a lot of these independent contractor negotiations. That's why, I drive for Uber. I drive for DoorDash. I am an independent contractor. They put terms of use on the screen. I either agree to those terms of use or I don't have a gig. We do not have equal bargaining power. And that is a problem when it comes to the independent contractor relationship in any sort of business operation. So yes.
So I love the argument that Keaton's making here because he is pointing out that, yeah, this is a problem, but it's not Jimmy's problem. Jimmy's just taking the measures to protect himself because he's a, whether you like it or not, divisive figure. People love him or hate him. And the people that hate him are fakes like the Young Turks. And as Keaton pointed out here, they're obviously behind this because they, interviewed Bragman about it and pimped it and everything. And it just goes to show how seriously desperate these people are. I mean, they're so desperate to find anything they can to discredit Jimmy Dore that they will dig this deep. Look how pathetic this is. Look how sad and reaching for straws these people are. So I put together this graphic of the tits, because that's what they are. And no offense to tits, because I love tits, but these people are boobs. They're terrible. What are they doing? They're not. Max Blumenthal just exposed this Mozart guy. Why is TYT running a story on that? No, of course not. Because they work for Katzenberg. They work for the establishment. They're MSNBC Light. They're a fucking joke. What a joke of a... I mean, I'll stop there because I don't want to waste any more time on these irrelevant, terrible people.